Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our post-show Q&A for Live at the Gantries online. My name is Julia del Palacio, and I am here with my colleague, Carlos Cuestas. Carlos, how are you doing?
Hi, Julia. It's good to see you. It was a fantastic show. Now I'm feeling a lot better than I was before this show, so I'm really happy to have caught it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's definitely fantastic music. The Chivalrous Crickets, they did an amazing job, and we're going to be asking them some questions. So if we're ready, let's bring them into the studio. Hi.
There they are.
How
are you guys doing?
How you doing?
Great.
We have Fiona, Paul, and Genevieve. How are you guys feeling?
Great.
Oh, really good.
We're great. We got
to visit that separate from editing after a week or so.
Yeah. Well, it came out fantastic. It was really an amazing set. Beautiful music, beautiful songs, beautiful performance. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We loved doing it. It's rare these days that we get the chance to do that. So it was really fun.
Oh, good. All right, so we're going to be getting some questions from the audience and some comments, I'm sure. But while everybody joins from the different platforms, why don't you start by telling us how you guys got together? How did the project start? Fiona, let's start with you.
Sure. Genevieve and I are sisters, for anyone who doesn't know. So that answers that.
we hadn't noticed. There's no resemblance whatsoever.
We come from a family of musicians, and our parents have a band that does Celtic music. And then we became friends with Paul about 6 years ago. And Paul and I do a lot of classical music together in the sort of New York classical music world gig scene. But then we decided to form this band because he also loved folk music. So he's been like doing this awesome, like really like crazy learning curve of like all the stuff Genevieve and I grew up with. And then we, as a collective, we decided to also get into the Americana stuff. So that's really related to the Celtic stuff, and it's pretty easy. It's kind of like in our blood and our histories a little bit, but it's a newer thing that we've been concentrating on. And then Doug, who everyone saw playing, is a great friend of ours and Paul's roommate in New York. And he subbed in for Bradley, Genevieve's husband, who normally plays with us. So.
Well, he did amazing. He did an amazing job for sure. All right, we have our first audience question from Elise Figa on Facebook, and she's asking, what is a chivalrous cricket?
Oh, wow.
We all want to know.
I'll let Jenna answer.
Yeah, so there is a book called the Medieval Bestiary, which is a collection of animals that were drawn in during the medieval times. They look kind of funny. They're not drawn in a way that we would recognize them, but it's sort of like a catalog of all the creatures of the earth that was created hundreds of years ago.
I thought might be the creatures of the earth somewhere. Yeah.
So and in it the cricket, the little tagline for the cricket that explains what it is a creature that sings forgetting all else, which we thought was appropriate for our group and our family that have been accused of breaking out into song randomly over the dinner table, which does happen in our household. So and chivalrous, I don't know where that.
We just tried out different adjectives and we thought that one was quirky and we liked it.
Yeah. I think at one time we were thinking of being called the rooftop crickets because we've done a whole bunch of our rehearsal sessions on roofs in New York City.
Oh, that was you guys.
Yeah. It was
right. Nobody called the police on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, chivalrous has a better ring to it than rooftop.
We agree. Although some people have been like, this is hard to say.
It is a little hard to say. But
shivering crickets. Yeah.
Oh, shivering. Yeah, that's a little sad.
Yeah, so well, you guys mentioned that you have some classical music background training. I was wondering if what are having some of the like difficulties, or rather like what's been sort of easy bringing those to. I mean, traditional music and classical music have this very weird split, but let's try to keep them split for the sake of argument. were there some difficulties trying to bridge those in, especially like in the genres that you're sort of arranging and living with, or was it kind of like a seamless transition?
Yeah, I mean, well,
Yeah.
I think so much of the music we play comes from a time like the split between classical music and folk music is kind of more of like a modern perception. I mean, and it really began in like the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries. But back in the day, music was all kind of much more closely together. There wasn't as much of a separation, and much of the training that Fiona and I have pursued has kind of been with Baroque music and with Renaissance music and with early music that comes from a time where not everything was written down on a page. A lot of the harmonies are implied or like open to interpretation. A lot of the rhythm is open to interpretation, how many repeats you take, how many verses you play, and all that is really directly applicable to doing folk music.
Yeah,
and folk
it's all
arrangements.
like cut and pasted and
So in that ways, it's kind of you have like all these skills already kind of there. The big challenge for me was like adapting the instruments that I know how to play from a very different genre of music into
Jen and I were like,
into
no,
this project.
no, it's, okay, yeah, that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually in the show I only played banjo because we just had the perfect banjo set. But like for many of our other shows and for our CD and everything, I play a Baroque guitar and a theorbo, which is like a very large lute, and
And a normal lute.
And
Yeah, I'd say like I think that it's really cool because it gives us so many more sounds and textures to play with to have all of those instruments. And like for anyone who's not familiar with them, they're obviously like you're hearing a strummed thing, but it's quite a different timbre than like a modern guitar. And so yeah, like he can do all of this awesome stuff that you won't hear a normal folk group doing that isn't using a theorbo. But then like sometimes we'll have to say like actually like it really needs to be strummed in this kind of specific rhythm with hits on these certain beats because it's like an Irish tune.
Jenna loves directing hits.
Jenna, seems like you wanna say something. You've been wanting to say something.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is that it was challenging for me because Fiona and Paul come from a classical music background where they are incredible at reading music and understanding how all these harmonies are supposed to fit together and the theory behind that. And I don't. I come from a traditional Irish music background. And so it's an oral tradition. So we don't use music, anything like that. So I've had to get a lot better, not even just about the music, but in working together as a band, where Paul will say something like, well, do you want the diminished sixth chord? And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I just want it to sound different than that.
Anytime anybody asks you that, Jen, though, just say yes. The answer is yes to that.
Yeah.
So that's been a real
The 11s.
Yeah, I've probably had the simplest time because I speak Jenna's language and Paul's language kind of equally. So yeah,
translator. That's good.
That's good to have. And so you come from definitely a musical family, and you make music together. So John from YouTube wants to know. I'm sorry, the CUNY Dance Initiative from Facebook wants to know, what instruments do your parents play?
My mom plays fiddle, which is what Genevieve plays, and that's her whole life. I mean, she's like the fiddler of the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And then our dad plays guitar and keyboard.
Yes.
And a lot of actually more modern traditional bands, like a plugged-in keyboard that you can put on outdoor festival stages has become really part of the sound. So yeah, that.
We have another redheaded sister that is our little sister who is
over there.
From there, but she doesn't have toenails. And she's a gorgeous traditional harp player. She used to go over to Ireland and compete in that. So that was sort of the backdrop of what we grew up with all together.
It sounds incredible.
Had a band in Bethlehem for 30 years or something like this. So
wow, we want to come to dinner one time.
Yeah.
So that we can...
We are inviting ourselves to dinner.
Exactly.
invited.
And we want some music.
Outdoor area.
With the man's own music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of distances, and by the way, Fiona, that was a wonderful tribute to, and I think you're echoing a lot of what we're all feeling in New York City, having either left or stayed, or so that was a wonderful tribute, as I said, to the situation, and to that end, John from YouTube wants to know what's changed about your music now you're not living day to day in New York City.
So I, now that I'm not working regularly, being hired as a contract and freelance musician for classical music, I have been writing a lot more. I've been doing a lot more folk music because it's something that we can do here. We're with my family, and Paul's been around and Jenna's been around. So like sometimes I'd be out of town for 3 weeks on a contract or something. And now I'm learning 2 new instruments. So it's definitely that kind of like that backyard music is part A, and then part B is just taking the time to do that stuff that I have been saying. I'm definitely one of those people that's been saying for years that I wanted to like learn how to play something I could accompany myself on, and I wanted to, whatever. And that's happening. So that's for me. I'm sad to have lost my travel and my choral gigs. I do a lot of professional choral singing on one hand, but on another hand, this has given me, because I'm lucky enough to have somewhere to come and live with space and with extra instruments lying around, the chance to like dig into that stuff I didn't do when I was just like learning like tomorrow's music all the time. So yeah. But maybe you.
Yeah, I mean, really similarly,
it's kind of probably the same thing.
It's given us an opportunity to kind of view our music in kind of a way that like we can pursue the projects or the songs or whatever that we just have an interest in pursuing, and that you just want to create, rather than having to like try to catch your breath for tomorrow's show for this next thing. And so much of being a freelancer is just like constantly performing.
It's like, what is this week? You're done with it. You table it. You never see it again.
Trying to not be underperformed is one way of it. Or underprepared. So it's just really given us the opportunity to compose new stuff and really pursue new traditions and learn new instruments.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's been great. It's just you don't make as much money with that stuff.
While you're playing for yourself in your backyard.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad. And you were just talking about the different traditions. So we have a question from Elise, another question from Elise Vigan on Facebook. She's asking, what is the definition of Americana and how does it connect with other traditions from the United States?
I think Americana, that's a term that can mean a lot of different things to me. Specifically, the music we were doing has a few names. It's like old time or mountain music or Appalachian music. It's Americana in the sense that it defines something that has a very like specifically American art form. Sorry, I lost the other part of the question, but like that's kind of a term that's thrown around that's like friendly to people being like, oh, it's American, and how does it connect with other traditions in the U.S.? Oh, well, I mean, the old time tradition that we play, it is like so richly something just fell out of the sky. It's really like an awesome blend of the music that was brought over by settlers from Scotland and England primarily, and then the music of the African American culture that grew up next to them. Primarily like one of the most obvious things to see and hear is the banjo, which is an African instrument, and its integration into what had been sort of Celtic and British Isles music. But so much of those songs and tunes, they're so integrally tied together. I was learning a lot about this on this awesome Ken Burns documentary that came out this year called Country Music. And it starts back in the 1700s when the huge waves of those immigrants were settling all throughout the southeastern United States. And it goes up to modern country music, but the whole first episode goes into this. And I knew that. It's kind of thing but if anyone wants to understand that more, check out that documentary. It's great about that.
Yeah. And Jenna, even on that light, like you did reference very strongly Dolly Parton. So I know they're not necessarily Americana and Dolly Parton necessarily related, but can you tell us a little bit more about that inspiration of that rather famous and beautiful song?
Yeah, well, actually, that's a really interesting example of what Fiona was just talking about, because that song so a few years ago, that's a song that people that are familiar with the American ballads know. That's a very, very common song in the American ballad culture, Silver Dagger, and it's a story that gets replicated a lot. A couple years ago, I was in England and I went to a famous folk music library, the Vaughan Williams Folk Music Library in London, and I was just going through some old books, ballad books, and I came across a song called Arise, Arise. And it was the original version of the Silver Dagger, which has changed after it came to the mountains of West Virginia and turned into the Silver Dagger. But it was really cool because I actually found the original lineage of that song. But Dolly Parton, I mean, she's a great example of somebody who might be viewed as a country pop singer, but her background, a lot of these individuals come from backgrounds where they are schooled in the ballad singing traditions of the American Appalachian style. And so
she grew up in like a big rural family compound in Tennessee or something like that.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of interesting to listen to some of her music because a lot of it is based in a lot of her storytelling. Even if it's a song that she's written, it's based in storytelling that's traditional. And so that was a song that it was one of those things where I learned it. I heard it from a number of different sources. I heard it from a friend of mine who's actually an Irish singer named Liz Simmons, who, well, she goes in between genres, but I had been touring with the John Whalen Band, which is a traditional Irish music band. And she was in that band and she sang it. And at the same time, I heard Dolly Parton's version. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of cool is that we sometimes don't realize how much what we view as pop country music is actually rooted in all of this traditional Appalachian music.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's definitely very, very interesting. And that documentary sounds amazing. And speaking of storytelling, we have a question from the Shakedown Dance Collective on Facebook. Love the storytelling part of the music. Is that how you create new work normally?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah. I think that a lot. Just thinking about Paul's songs, like his one about his gunslinging uncle, and even the ones I've written, the two that I wrote that are on this show, they're a little bit more personal. But like the one about our friend Father Andrew, who's this priest, it's kind of like, it tells us, I guess, a little bit of a story about his life. But for me, I've written a few that are more of a ballad style and more that are sort of what we'd think of as a more modern song style, which is kind of like things couched in metaphor and like meanings here and thoughts there that are put poetically. They're kind of really quite different writing styles. Like the old ballad forms that are just like telling this story in sort of like language that gets a lot of story out without a lot of detail. That's actually a project I've been working on recently, writing a ballad in imitation of what it's like a 18th century ballad would be like, and I find it kind of different. So
Fiona gets what I've noticed about her songwriting, because she does the most songwriting out of any of us. Paul and I, Paul wrote an entire album. Paul wrote an entire album recently. I dabble.
He has a whole solo album he just put out.
But I think it's Fiona is an avid amateur photographer. And I think that she sees a lot in vignettes of inspiration, like moments that she then will extrapolate into songs. So I think a lot of it comes from.
Never heard you say that before.
Yeah, I just realized it. So, but yeah, because I think that we've had the privilege of the past 5 years of us all living together of having these little moments that are really quirky or funny or picturesque, being in New York and being in all of these different, just interesting people, and so they're all very inspiring and imitatable, and that makes for good songwriting.
What do you think of that? Like, what brings you on to write a song? I've actually never asked him this either.
I never.
That's why we're doing this, guys.
Exactly. It's not for you, really.
And then you get to know each other.
Exactly.
No, I think it's. I love that quote. That history. I'm not going to be able to rattle it off. But all the best stories are true. and that there's just so much like fascinating history that is kind of history instead of nonfiction, or instead of something that's made up, and just like learning about history and learning about legend and myth, and like where it kind of crosses over between actual history versus like versus legend, which becomes more fantastical and everything, and you can't tell where one ends and one begins. And I think that's just a very cool sensation. It just gives you so much imagery, and from then you just write something with it. Then,
yeah, your lyrics always do have a lot of like a real situation and then like references to like a Roman god or something to give the context of the whatever.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Flexible.
exactly. We do have one more question from our Facebook audience, actually. Mira O'Malley, who is hi, by the way. And she wants to know what instruments are you learning, Fiona? And I guess, Jenny, if you are learning any instruments, you can chime in.
I have been learning that mountain dulcimer that I played on the which one was that? Oh, our Wayfaring Stranger. I played it on that. And Mira, heads up, I just ordered from Belarus, of all places, a hurdy-gurdy. So I will have that in like 3 months. And I'm going to start learning this. This is like a cranked keyboard. It's like a string and a keyboard instrument you sit on your lap combined. I was saying I wanted to learn an instrument I could accompany myself with, and the theme seems to be something I don't have to like hold awkwardly. And it's like I just keep ordering that sit on my lap.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't like this feeling, but and then I've also just been like reacquainting myself with like music theory and like knowing how to write my own chords, so I don't always like bring everything to Paul and be like, help, all I wrote is a melody. And so I've been spending a little more time at the piano, and I've been I'm considering that almost like its own instrument, is like getting my harmony structure in place and not just my like linear melody structure. So
You're being a good singer, Fiona.
Yeah, we're all thrilled. Yeah.
All right. We want to see results next year, so
Okay.
get ready.
I'll bring back the chart that's in my handwriting.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So thank you so much. We're going to start wrapping up. So why don't you tell the audience where they can find you online, where they can find your music and all of that?
Well, we're on Facebook and Instagram. So, and both of those, like the handle is just Chivalrous Crickets. We are also on all of the streaming websites. As of very recently, we released an EP on July 1st.
Nice. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations.
And that's also on Bandcamp. So that, yeah, like Bandcamp, iTunes, Amazon. I'm gonna.
Amazon Music, yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of videos, some of which were sort of more professionally done, and some of which we made our quarantine project to just like put out videos from Paul's sister's art studio. So that's all on YouTube. Our website is chivalrouscrickets.com, and yeah, we have another EP coming out soon with some guest friends, artists that we've been working on really recently, actually, and we have a full album coming out if we're able to get into the space, like health, government things willing, sometime in 2021. So,
and Fiona, if people wanted to, can people visit Darby Folk Fest online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This same program will be presented at a festival that we were supposed to travel to Derbyshire, England to do in October, but it is also going to be online instead. And that's October 4th.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So
Darby Folk Fest, which is spelled like the word Derby, like a horse race.
okay. All right. So but people can find that on your website. And
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Yeah. So audience, now you know where to find the Chivalrous Crickets, and their concert will live in the Coververse Center YouTube channel and Facebook forever. So you can go back and see it again. And if you didn't catch the full show, you can see it again. Make sure to follow Coververse Center on Facebook so that you learn about other concerts that we're going to be not performing. I'm not going to be performing, but presenting in the fall as well. Next week and the week after, we still have Live at the Gantries online. Next week, we have Claudia Valentina, the Mexican songstress. So make sure to tune in. And that's it for me. Thank you so much, guys, for everything.
Thank you for having us. And for working so hard to still make this festival happen right now.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Yes.
I can say. So.
And hopefully next time we'll see you in person, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
You, guys.
Good night.